welcome to 2020. So here we go. So that was the method. Many futurologists, soothsayers, forecasters talk about 2020. It is easy to understand. So we thought we'd do our own research too. But I'll just introduce the future. GDP, PPP, however you want to look at it. Here's a table. Has a rank order of countries. Shows you some shifts. Maybe your country is on it. Maybe you're going up, maybe you're declining. So many people use this information to forecast what the future might look like. Here's an example shared with me by GfK. Whether you believe this or not, if there are 1 billion more China tourists traveling to the cultural centers of Europe and other places, it has significant implications on all these areas. Do we have the airport, hotel infrastructure? Do we have enough soy milk? Are our languages right? What about if they spent $95 billion in tourism last year? If that's 4 times as many, are we ready for that? We also wanted to see what the people of the world thought. So we surveyed over 3,000 people using mobile technology. So perhaps there's some immediate bias there. We got some interesting responses. So I'll go through some headlines here. The people of the world expect China to be the largest economy. They also expect the world to be mostly Wi-Fi'd and 3D technology to be everywhere. Printing, screens, and so on. Celebrities will become politicians. Interestingly, a lot of people, particularly people from Asia, think that David Beckham would be the best European president. He can unite Europe in a way that others haven't been able to. Sadly, the Siberian tiger, according to the people of the world, will no longer exist in 2020. Oh, I've lost my phone now. Never mind. Interesting. Only 1/4 of people expect the mobile device to look like the smartphone that we've been all looking at today and yesterday. Most people expect glasses, contact lenses, to be the future mobile device, and clothing too. We've got all this broken out by region, by country. And there's some biases, but here we're talking in general terms. So some big changes. Be even less of a phone, the people believe, than it is today. So more TV, more mobile payments, everlasting batteries, mobile health, political voting, some big changes. That means, inevitably, we'll have to change our etiquette, our rules, our social code. We see some of it already, but who wants to sit in a meeting with somebody wearing some digital contact lenses that means they have an advantage? They work out whether you're being sarcastic, whether you've put your clothes together properly, whether you're lying. So we'll have to change our business code. So as I say, it's predictable, it's easy to understand, I think. Get your head around it. What that also means is that mobile market research will become our standard. Mobile everywhere, data everywhere. Some markets we can expect to be mobile only, all markets mobile dominant. It means the shape of our industry will be very different. I apologize now that most of my slides kind of follow the same format, but it's the various people who you saw on the slide at the beginning much more qualified than I am to talk about our mobile future. And I'm not going to go through each quote. I'll pick up the odd comment. It's not a question of if, but when. Mobile is relevant for all businesses. The best use is everything. So mobile everywhere, front and center of our world. Now, if mobile's everywhere, data everywhere. Is Isaac still here? Helpfully, Isaac, who named his company after the title of my presentation, said that the connection to the digital world will be a sixth sense. So we're connected everywhere. The types of data, very different. Of course, that means that what we've been talking about today, we'll continue to talk about that, but we'll be talking about different applications. Some markets, mobile only. Maybe. Some people say the mobile research industry will be 10 times the size of the market research industry today. This has been publicly stated. It's been presented about last year. So a very different landscape. Second matrix reference. So we need to work out how to read the matrix to become Neo, Morpheus, Trinity, whoever else I can remember. So it's predictable, it's easy to understand, it's front and center. But if it's front and center and it's 10 times the size of the market research industry today, then of course it's got to be different, naturally. Mobile market research will be nothing like it is today. Different data, different approaches, different feedback, different research models, lots of challenges, affects all of us. How? That's for us to debate and decide, and for us to continue to discuss. It's different. It's not just survey apps, it's not just DIY, very different. Different data, different approach. Already, McDonald's Asia Pacific, challenging how we measure things, saying that our lifestyles are going to change, the technology will change, therefore, we have to do research differently. The way we ask the questions, the way we get the answers, all that needs to change too. And importantly, we have to let go of consistency. It came up yesterday, it's come up today, about norms, backward-looking data sets. It's a big challenge in this future. Open Innovation, 9010, an open innovation company. They are already eating market researchers' lunch. They are charging a fortune for the types of research they do, which is a lot of social media scraping. Open Innovation. I've seen some of their reports that they do exclusively for an industry and sell to the highest bidder. That's very different to the way we price our research at the moment. So an automotive future report that they've done, they offered it out to the automotive industry. So one player gets to buy it and the others don't. It means the research we're doing, if it's going to be 10 times bigger, it's going to happen fast. Otherwise, we can't fit it into the year. So it's test and learn. It's accepting 70%, which we accept in daily life, but we're going to need to start to accept in market research. So the obsession with accuracy, with percentage points, decimal places, all these things are going to get fuzzier. If we've got all these things happening, we're starting to get our data differently. Big data we hear a lot about. Here, Andreyko, RBS, and Visions Live talks about fast data. Fast data being an organization's lifeblood. If you're not getting your data fast, you're going to be out of business. Also means that the debriefs have got to change. By the time you've taken the time to write your presentation, the data's changed, your presentation's out of date. So we're going to have completely different styles of debrief. Sure, we'll still have people standing on platforms doing presentations, writing PowerPoints, doing data tables, and all these things. But they will be the people who are behind. The people ahead of the game will be working like this. Fast data. Use of technology in the deployment of survey results. Again, there will be presentation workshops, but they will be different. We'll have live streams of information coming through, open Twitter feeds, whatever else will be there in 2020. Feeding directly into R&D, data scientists. Heard a lot about that yesterday. I think it's the first time I've heard it today. So outputs will be smarter by the use of data science. which means we will probably all be a lot clearer about our roles. Not all of us data scientists, not all of us would want to be. Some of us are inconsistent, slow, and expensive. Interesting question. Are we trying to push ourselves up the value chain to make ourselves feel more important? Can we do the consulting job that many of us crave? Or do we accept what the role is? Now, as we saw with Mardine's presentation, there's a lot of stuff available now. It's all there. This is not truly the future, because the future's already here. It's how we choose to use it, which will shape the tomorrow, which will shape 2020. Poor Gandalf, stuck in the snow. So it's going to be hard to connect with people. Nice point there by Isaac. The consumer will be easier to find, but much harder to touch. It's easy for us to identify things now. It's going to be easier as time goes on, but harder for us to make the connection. A very conservative Swiss client, Alexander. However, he expects every 20 minutes or so he's going to be getting a promotion, a discount code, a voucher, an offering. If he's receiving all those things every 20 minutes, why is he going to want to do a survey? Unless those things are linked. And maybe that's a new incentive model. Talked a little bit about data control as well. Are we all on a panel? Are virtual panels the future? We're all revealing so much information about ourselves, we can all be accurately profiled. We might want to take control back. But does that mean we're all on the future panel, the future research panel, the virtual model? We're lazy. We're inert. Do we have the right kind of talent? Some big questions. But we can be sure that mobile is front and center. Long live mobility. Is this a future research project? Take everything we've talked about over the last 2 days, everything you've heard that sounds exciting over the last year or so, throw it into a project. Is that the typical research project? More inputs, blurred boundaries, text analytics, algorithms, combined with proprietary data, data that you possess yourself. Is that the future? Many believe so. If it is the future, are we ready for it? Can we adapt? Is this believable? 7 years ago, a lot of us were on dial-up. The iPhone hadn't been launched. Facebook was in its infancy. Already, we've seen a lot change in the last 7 years. This is only 7 years' time. It's believable. We occasionally see projects like this. We'll see them more and more. These will become the standard. But some things will remain the same. It's good to see you in that kind of company, Alistair. Very prophetic. Businesses will still have problems. They're still going to need fixing. They're still going to have the requirement for external expertise. The data, the technology, the data science can take things so far, but we still need the objectivity. That's what we're there to provide. So the fundamental need to do research will remain. $300 billion industry. Mobile market research at the center of it. These kind of events, not fringe, these attended by many thousands of people. These being the new Congress, the Congress of the future. So the big question, are we ready? Are we ready? Let's debate it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dan. Excellent. Well, I'm sure that's made people's minds start to think a little bit. So do we have any questions from the floor for Dan? So for the first 6 slides, I thought your microphone wasn't working.
Oh, really?
But no, it was obviously what you had intended. So you're clearly excited by the future. embracing it with open arms. Is there anything that, from what you've just talked and what you've just gone through, what do you think might be the scariest aspect of all of that?
Our existence. That if we don't listen to this, learn, adapt appropriately, then we're out of business, all of us. We are potentially the case study of the industry in disruption without realizing it. So we need to listen. Yeah, these aren't my opinions. This is my collection of people's wisdom, people in the industry, and the general public around the world. This is the expectation, and we can see glimpses of it. It's believable. Sure, there's some bits and pieces you might disagree with, but if we don't listen and respond appropriately, we're doomed. So you have to be excited, or you might as well go home.
Do you have any questions at all? I've got Frank over there. Microphone to Frank.
I guess I was around before online was the big thing, and we didn't really define the industry based on the data collection methodology. Went through several phases of that. So what's different about mobile phones or mobile devices that is fundamental to changing the entire trajectory of the industry and our role in it?
Price and ubiquity, emerging markets, changing economic models, all those things. Probably the average price of a research project will decrease dramatically. And 90% of the research buyers don't buy research today. This is where the big growth is coming from. The mom and pop shops that can do a quick survey, that will occasionally use SurveyMonkey and will use the SurveyMonkey equivalents of the future. We see it already. There's mobile devices in everybody's hands. That's going to get bigger and bigger, and they're going to become smarter, and we've talked about all the different ways we can collect data. All these things are changing dramatically. The old model, the pricing model, McDonald's have challenged it. It needs to change. Of course it needs to change, and as RBS say, fast data will become the lifeblood of the organization. So all these things are fundamental shifts, and they truly are. And we have people who will defend the old ways of doing measurement, the face-to-face collection and things. These are still going to be there, but they aren't going to be the things that are driving the dynamic new businesses. The research project of the future, it references Amazon. We talked about dunnhumby, Tesco. All these things, big data, fast data, they're all fundamental shifts, and they're talked about at every single conference to do with research all around the world. So this is truly, and it's not my words, this is potentially a case study of an industry in disruption without realizing it. I guess kind of goes by definition with being an industry in disruption.
Very interesting picture you have painted, and in some ways it could be scary or could be exciting, depending on one's orientation. But just based on experience, you painted a picture that this is a disruption. So we're in the midst of being disrupted, our business models are disrupted, and the theory of the disruption is that new players will take over the industry. So in our case, it looks like it's going to be the IT companies that's going to take over our industry as disruption moves towards the peak end. So do you see this happening, that eventually the number one research company could be tech-based?
Let me tell you, so it didn't make it in the final presentation, but an SVP at Nielsen told me that IBM grows by the size of Nielsen every 9 months. So one day they'll accidentally sit on Nielsen. Then they will become the biggest player in our industry. So I can see that. So every 9 months, it grows by the size of our biggest player. Occasionally, we do see them turning up on pitches. So HP and Autonomy won a research project recently, a voice of a customer project in Dubai. Why they were on the pitch, 5 years ago they wouldn't have been, but these days they are. So they've got fantastic voice recognition capabilities. Lots of automatic analysis, and they beat some big research players to it. These are glimpses of the future, and it's a real challenge. Maybe the IT companies take over. Maybe it's the open innovation groups. Until they told me, I had no idea that such a concept of doing an industry report and putting it up to the highest bidder, and they paid a lot in the automotive industry, would have existed. But it does, and it's happened. And you could do that across any industry. And that is both scary and exciting. And that's the kind of challenge we need to respond to.
Just in your opinion, what would you say is the most disruptive technology that we're seeing at the moment, at least? What's or perhaps on the horizon for 2020?
Great question. I kind of glibly say the mobile device, but there's got to be something a bit more specific than that. But maybe that's it. Maybe that is the most disruptive technology. The fact that this is becoming, the limb, the sixth sense, whatever it is, that connected everything. Maybe that is the biggest disruption. And of course, not just to our industry, but to many industries too. So, I mean, we've already seen some big casualties with this growth in mobile and economic destruction that's happening and some changing powers. And you see some big casualties in other industries too. So it's not confined to us. But maybe biased because of the forum, but the mobile device, is it one specific thing? No, I don't really see that yet. It's the fact that suddenly we do have a sixth sense, we have a limb, we can all mine it, other people can mine it who couldn't mine it before. And that's a really big challenge to the traditional way, the way we've been doing things for 60 years, and certainly the way we were doing things a decade or so ago.
Sometimes lately in US they were talking about too big to fail banks, and when all this crisis started, and I always was kind of changing that term, saying too big to change, because I think one of the biggest problems is when the companies grow bigger, they become more inert, and it's harder to change for them. And it's naturally during evolution, the bigger it is, the harder to change, and the smaller, the newer it is, it's easier to adopt. So having that in mind, do you think if the companies are larger, they should, first of all, because clearly it's a paradigm shift. It's mobile, it's technology itself is changing how we think, how we behave, and how we interact. And we don't know how it's going to change. We have some thesis, but we don't know. Maybe there's some new Google comes out or some new Facebook. But do you think it's easier to change, or is it easier to change big companies, big inertial companies, or is it easier to replace? I mean, wait until they fall and then just a new. I mean, or would it be a call to bigger companies to break down into smaller to be able to survive? What's your take basically? How you think a large company, a large multi-billion company, I don't know if there is any company in this industry like that large, who has a lot of investment in the old way of doing stuff. What's the suggestion? What's your take on how? Because it's not easy to change too. Because if once, for example, AT&T, they invested billions of dollars into cabling, and then fiber optics came out, they didn't even take the returns from and then they have to change now. So what would be your recommendation for the big companies? How should they?
Well, people respond to change differently, don't they? Some people, you see a company acquisition, some people get really excited by that and they're really up for it. Other people get very depressed and their emotions change day by day. So we all respond differently to change, and that's true for companies as it's true for individuals. So here's an opportunity to change. Now, whether the industry truly embraces it or whether just a series of companies will, that's debatable. I suspect a series of companies will, a series of companies won't, and at some stage they'll realize that their life stage has reached death. And that's sad, but you can see already there are some companies who, if you consider it as a life stage, they're in retirement. They are celebrating the successes of the past, and they're not prepared for a rebirth. And unless they are prepared for a rebirth, or they're prepared to increase their longevity, then they're going to go. And that, I think, is inevitable. And to some extent, you can see that from the kind of companies that are here today, but also the kind of companies that aren't. And it's for you to determine the companies that you think ought to be here and aren't. They must have their own opinion on what they're doing about mobile, about these kind of opportunities.
Indeed, very exciting times. Has anybody else got any more questions at all? In that case, then, thank you very much, Dan. Thank you.